Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast.
Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live Studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here again with another Tuesday edition of Oilers Live. Went off the book this week and thought we'd invite somebody from enemy territory. We've got Jesse Cohen from the official LA Kings podcast, the Kingsmen podcast. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thank you very much.
And, of course, sometimes co-host, sometimes guest, Mr. Dash himself from Straight Off the Pipe podcast. Thanks for joining, Dash.
Pleasure as always, Michael. Thank you.
All right. So, this is, I don't know. I mean, this is the first time we've had one really happy guy on the podcast and two not so happy guys on the podcast all at the same time. I've had a chance to listen to your post game on Kingsmen podcast, Jesse. I've watched the game. I did our post game. I watched this game now, I've got to say 4 times through. Maybe not.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Maybe not at regular speed, clipping through and doing that. I mean, give me your I'm going to do it this way because it's much easier if I respond to what you say. So, give me your thoughts on the game last night. I mean, you're coming from the land of LA, where the reality is I'm not sure anybody's betting on LA outside of LA, right? I mean, is that a fair statement? Even
I think I've only seen one person choose the Kings. I think it was Gord Stellick was the only person I've seen that picked the Kings to win the series. Now, to be fair, I don't traffic in series predictions a lot. I have a bunch of goofy rules that I like to throw out. And one of them is when everybody agrees on something, that generally means it's wrong. So a series like this, if you can find one person, who goes against the grain, you can usually ignore it. If you find 5 to 10 people, then you go like, all right, now we've got something. But yeah, if the vast majority of people are pulling in one direction, that's usually my sign that it's wrong. It's why I picked Washington over Florida. Everybody's saying the Panthers are going to crush and, skate their way into the Stanley Cup final. And I just sort of go, nah, they'll lose in the first round. And everyone will go, I don't understand how it happened. Sorry, the long diversion from your question, which was what's my takeaway from last night's game. I was talking to my dad about the game today, the guy who taught me hockey. And I think his take on it is probably my take on it, which is everything you would expect from a Kings-Oilers matchup in 2002 happened. McDavid scored a goal that was, just filth and absurd individual talent. Draisaitl got the puck on his stick and proved that if you give him enough time and space, he'll make you pay. The Kings, ground out and scored goals courtesy of that second line. And took too many penalties, didn't do well on the special teams. And then ultimately Mike Smith coughed the game up. So from a Kings fan perspective, that was the script for how a win is going to go. And I'll take it. I think there's a lot of things the Kings need to correct going into game 2. I think they know that. And I trust that they will.
Well, damn it, Jesse, you're far too rational, man. All of that makes perfect sense to me. Dash, I mean, you got anything to say to that? I mean, to me, geez, I don't know that you could really really argue with any of those points. Your thoughts, Dash?
Yeah, I think that was a pretty rational. Sorry, I was just making him know Gord Stellick. I just wanted to know whose driveway I was putting the flaming paper bag on. I got that. So, yeah, you know what? I was at the game last night, so I had a different perspective. I haven't had the time privilege to watch it 4 times over like my esteemed colleague here. So, I still just have the fresh live moment in my ear and eyes. And ultimately, it was a good game. It didn't have the greatest result, obviously, as an Oilers fan, but I thought it was competitive all the way through. And I thought, it wasn't the Oilers' best game. It might not even have been the Kings' best game, but the Kings capitalized on the mistake when it mattered. And I think when the shots were 33-33 and the score was 3-3, from that point on, Jonathan Quick played better. And I think that's what it comes down to. And often, goaltending in playoffs is what will determine that. So
I know this isn't my show, but I'm going to interrupt and host for you guys for a second. That's what happens when you invite a host on. You said that it was pretty competitive. Isn't that a loss for the Oilers? Like, if you're an Oilers fan and you're watching this series, you don't want it to be competitive, right? Like, you guys have the overwhelming offensive edge.
Yeah, and I'll talk to that because you said it on your podcast, right? Is you at one point you thought, oh no, the Oilers are going to run away with this, right? It was after Yamo's goal, and I thought so too. I thought, look, this is where it's going to turn right here. It's 2-2. The Oilers are going to score one, go up, and hey, we're counting this game one victory. And Mike Smith had other ideas, I guess, but whatever the case is, you're right. I think you're 100% right. And given the fact that Doughty's out, right, should be just another sort of piece to that puzzle. There's a guy that and look, I mean, part of this was everybody talking about Danault and Kopitar shutting down McDavid and Draisaitl. I don't even know if that's what happened last night. I don't think that's what happened, right? Like I think that they did a good job, and Danault certainly in that line had a great game, but I don't think they shut down Draisaitl and McDavid, but they didn't. Turns out they didn't have to, right? They just needed to score more. Like who pegged LA for getting 4 goals in this game? I mean, when you look, they were showing graphics at the beginning of the game. Connor McDavid's with 123 points, and what did Kopitar finish with? Right? Like,
60-something.
This is not a 4-3 game. This is not a 4-3 score. This was, if you were to expect the Kings to win games, it was going to be 2-1, 3-2, but certainly not 4-3. 3-2.
4-3 if Mike Smith gives up 1.5 expected goals, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we didn't bring our best effort. If the Kings bring their best effort and the Oilers bring their best effort, I believe the Oilers win wholeheartedly, at least in a 7-game series. We should have the forward advantage. We should have the D advantage, which is crazy to come out of my mouth. But LA is strapped right now. You guys don't have a ton of experience back there outside of Edler. So the short of it is we didn't bring it, and we should have. It was a bit of a track meet. I like what you said, Jesse, on your show when you said the ice just seemed to tilt in whatever direction the offense was going. So I agreed with that wholeheartedly. If you'd asked me at the beginning of all of this playoff bracket start, who I would want to line up with, I would have picked the LA Kings. But, out of the other side of my mouth, if you ask me which 2 centermen I would want to avoid the most in this playoff, it might be Kopitar and Danault, right? Like it's not Lindholm and Backlund in Calgary. It's not Hartman and Eriksson in Minnesota.
Is a goal scorer
right?
now, though, Dash.
He is. He is. And both of those guys are. They're very similar players in Kopitar and Danault. And it was hard enough to line up against Kopitar all these years, let alone 2 of them. So, and at the same time, I think we have to get past that. And I don't know if they were in Connor McDavid and Draisaitl's way, per se. I just think that when it came down to it, the Kings executed on what they needed to, and perhaps the Oilers didn't. So, I don't know. Yeah, this isn't the LA Kings team that Trevor Moore grew up watching.
No.
right?
No, it's
Most of
not.
those guys are in Calgary now.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you said.
yeah.
Shots fired. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny listening to you say that, and the reason I asked if you don't want it to be competitive, the boy, I almost called you guys the Flames. Sorry, you mentioned Calgary there. You got it in my head. I know it's blasphemy. I'm sorry, but the Oilers outshot the Kings. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but I feel like it was a margin. And the Kings
4 in the second period.
Yeah, but 10 of those were on the power play.
Yeah,
which is where I was sort of going with this. Is we all know that Edmonton has the better power play. I mean, I don't know what your percentage was on the season, but there's no reason that much offensive talent on the power play shouldn't be better than the Kings, which, our power play struggles. But at 5-on-5, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Kings outplayed Edmonton convincingly. And
that was the key.
Yeah. And, you talked about the offensive matchup and how Edmonton should dominate it. But because of special teams, our fourth line, we weren't playing with Arvidsson last night. So our fourth line, I think, was Lemieux, Byfield, and Kaliev. I think Lemieux played 3 minutes. I think Byfield played 5 minutes. I think Kaliev played 7 minutes. I thought Byfield and Kaliev looked pretty good at times. Lemieux scored a goal. So, we didn't even see that line. Arvidsson's not in the lineup. Athanasiou played 18 minutes, but I think was double shifted for a while. Like, the Kings are not going to turn to one guy and say, carry the load, bring us to the promised land. They are going to do what they've done all season long, which is beg you to be in a competitive game, right? The Kings, that's fine. Yeah. Make it a competitive 5-on-5 game. And we've played, I don't like saying I've gotten very, very comfortable in my, in my recent past saying, the Kings are very, very comfortable playing in 1-goal games and zero pressure, better road team than a home team. And Phil Deneau, I've been calling him the most valuable Phil all year long.
Hey, you know what? Why not? The guy, he took Montreal to the promised land and almost got them all the way, right? And then he's changed his game around somehow magically over a summer and has scored more goals than I think he's scored ever in his career. Mm-hmm. What did he finish with? 27 on the season. And he's playing, he's playing second line and if you didn't hear Iafallo, Deneau, and Moore last night, you had your TV on mute, right? Like, they were all over it, and right off the, right down to the first goal, right? It was, Oilers fans kind of got their introduction off that first goal, and it never stopped.
So we have some broadcasters out here in LA who have a number of years of experience. Nick Nixon does our play-by-play on the radio. Jim Fox is our color commentator on the TV side. And I like to get both of them together on the podcast. They've known each other a very long time. Jim played here as a King for 11 seasons. Nick has been a broadcaster in LA since 1981, I think. So these two guys have seen a ton of Kings hockey over the breadth of their careers. Gretzky, Palffy, Kopitar, Quick, Doughty, Blake, Nordstrom, the gamut. We were talking about Deneau on a recent episode of All the Kings Men, official podcast of the LA Kings. And, Jim covered the playoffs last year for NHL radio, and he was saying that he felt that going into this season, he felt he knew Deneau like the back of his hand. He had watched Deneau lead that team to the Stanley Cup final last year. Granted, it was a weird year, but nonetheless, he did it. And the awe and affection in Nick and Jim's voice when talking about the chemistry and the play of that line of Arvidsson, Deneau, and Moore. Last night, Iafallo, Deneau, and Moore. Like, these guys have seen the cup raised on home ice twice. These guys have seen Adam Deadmarsh, Jason Allison, Ziggy Palffy, Tomasz Sandstrom, Yari Curry, Wayne Gretzky, Marty McSorley, Kruzhelnyski. I'm running out of former Oilers. Paul Coffey, Grant Fuhrer.
Yeah.
To try and think of Jarrett Stoll, Matt Green, Lubomir Wisnowski. Just trying to rattle it. Dustin Penner.
Well done.
Hey, Dustin Penner. There we go.
But Colin Fraser.
You just named the attendees at a reunion party I saw a few months ago.
So these
Stoley
guys
carrying the load.
These guys have seen it all, and they are still impressed and still blown away with what that line has done this season. And that's how I know I'm not being absurd when I stammer and stutter and say I don't know. I just don't know what else to say about that line because they are so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to argue that. I mean they, you legit won a playoff spot, right? And you won it. If there was an actual team out there that played as a team and had depth up and down the lineup, I think LA qualifies in that regard. I mean, there's nobody, there's no Connor McDavid, there's no Leon Draisaitl on this team. It's just a bunch of guys going out there and doing what they need to do and getting it done, and it's being led by guys like Deneau and Moore. I mean, they're fun to watch. Do you expect Arvidsson back for Game 2?
I don't know. If I did know, I wouldn't tell you anyway. But I don't honestly know.
Michael has a direct line to Gates.
We were at practice. I was at practice on whatever day it was, the day before they left, Saturday, I think. And he left the ice in the middle of practice. Didn't appear to be hurt, but he left. And we talked to Todd McClellan after practice. Somebody asked him, what's going on with Arvidsson? McClellan said, it's personal matter, sort of, I don't know, he didn't laugh it off, but he didn't seem to be very serious and seemed to think that he would be back and would play. Now, the following day was the travel day. He wasn't on the ice for travel, but I understand that he was on the plane and he's with the team in Edmonton. That's what I'm told. I don't travel with the team, so I don't know.
There's been sightings.
And then he wasn't on the ice last night, so I have no idea. And I will say this about the team that I work for, and I need to be careful what I say about. They have I think it's deliberate. I could be wrong. I think they have done a really good job of setting up expectations for players' returns to be much later than they actually are. And so whether it was Edler or Brown or Drew Doughty earlier in the season, or Quentin Byfield, or all the guys that went on COVID or got hurt, and Lord knows we had a lot of them, it always felt like they were coming back a little bit early. Now, we haven't been given any reason for Arvidsson's absence, and so we haven't been given a timeline for his return, but
McClellan taught this sleight of hand to Woodcroft. We've seen it.
Yeah. I mean, I prefer it to what happened 20 years ago when Jason Allison and Adam Deadmarsh were injured, and we were told, oh, they'll be back by Christmas. Oh, they'll be back by the All-Star break. Oh, they'll be back by, and then, they're never back. Like Adam Deadmarsh retires, Jason Allison leaves by free agency without ever playing another game. So I would much rather be told, they're out for 6 months and then 2 months later they're back than the alternative. So, but I don't know. To answer your direct question, I have no idea.
It's absolutely a McClellan thing. We lived through it, and we're seeing it again with Woodcroft. And what do you think of that, by the way? I mean, I don't know how much you know about that situation, but Woodcroft and McClellan, have you spoken much about that? I mean, this is kind of a neat sort of head-to-head understanding.
Yeah.
That
Todd McClellan has had a number of very flattering things to say about Jay Woodcroft. I'm aware of their history, and I have no alternative but to believe that Todd McClellan means everything he says about him. I can't imagine he wouldn't. He seems to have genuine affection for him. It is a cool side story of the series. And I know that he's the first video coach promoted to head coach status to make the playoffs or something like that.
Jeez, I didn't even know that. Damn it.
Yeah.
I got
that was out there. Yeah.
Saw that graphic floating around social media the other day. I mean, it's a made up
Yeah.
thing. Like, I'm blanking on Captain Video's name, Roger Nielsen. Like, he wasn't a video coach because he pioneered the thing, so nobody bothered to call him. Like, he wasn't a video coach before he was anything else. But I feel like that's probably. But anyway, good for Woodcroft.
Yeah, no, I mean, and he's done exceptional. I ran the numbers today since he started February 10th. The Oilers' record was third best in the league, only third to our arch rivals Calgary and Florida. So tied for wins, though, since February 10th, which is not too bad, right? I mean, this is a team that I was going on a bit of a rant before the playoffs started, and was looking for all of the naysayers back in January of 2022, and I found a number of them that's, suggested the Oilers were not going anywhere. Connor McDavid was done, and a couple that also found we're talking about what a coaching change would do, and so just quickly, we've got one comment on YouTube I want to just respond to. We got Epiphany says, would love to stay but can't, have chemo early AM tomorrow. So it's the first game of a series. Let's see what game 2 brings. Good luck with chemo. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in. So I figured I'd respond to that. Hopefully caught you before you go, and so that's pretty serious stuff, but good luck with that. So anyway, where was I? I saw that. I felt I needed to respond to that. Oh yeah, I couldn't believe. I was looking. I went on this down this rabbit hole and found all sorts of indications, including our very own guys locally that were all saying coaching change isn't going to do anything. Obviously, it has. I mean, this is the same team with a couple of what I would consider minor additions to the roster, and they've done really well. Now, here's the big thing, and I'd like your take on it, Jesse, because even when you give the game story, you say something most of us in Edmonton have worried about, and it's goaltending. Do you think this team, like, what's your gut tell you about the Oilers team with the goaltending that they have? I mean, did you say
loaded question?
Yeah. Did you say anything sort of pre-playoffs?
Ask me when you're done.
Yeah.
I will refer back to the words of Todd McLellan. So in a game against the Anaheim Ducks, I think 3 or 4 games before the end of the regular season, the Kings gave up 17 shots on goal in the second period, I think. And it was very similar to last night's game. They took a bunch of penalties in the second period. Jonathan Quick came through. I think I referenced it last night in the postgame, so you guys probably heard me say this already. But Jonathan Quick came up huge in the second period. Then the Kings score early in the third, and then they wind up eating every puck that is thrown anywhere near the net in the third. Now, last night, Edmonton got a bunch of those pucks through in the last few minutes, but I think at the end of the second period, Edmonton, I think you guys had 29 shots on goal, and with, 3 or 4 minutes left in the third, you had 33 shots on goal. So, I mean, the Kings were doing a really excellent job to that point of making sure Quick didn't have to do much work. But the reason I bring all that up, we were asking Todd McLellan after that game, and we were talking to as many players as we could, saying, was that third period effort a way of saying thank you to Jonathan Quick for bailing you out in the second? Was that one of those games where your goaltender stands on his head and then you've got to pay him back? And Todd McLellan's quote was, I hope I'm not butchering it, when you have guys playing for a goalie, not just with a goalie, but for him, that's powerful. And I think that this Kings team is going to sound insanely childish. I think this team gets by on teamwork and friendship and, magic and all that stuff. And I don't know about the Oilers. I have no idea what kind of vibe there is in the Oilers locker room. I have no idea if Mike Smith, well, I know Mike Smith doesn't mean to the Oilers what Jonathan Quick means to the Kings, and that's not a knock on Mike Smith. That's just Jonathan Quick means absolutely everything to this franchise. I have repeatedly said, I think he's the most important king in franchise history, not the best king, but the most important king in that goalie's most important player. He's the best goalie, most important. So I don't know if the Oilers can ever play for Mike Smith in the way that a king would play for Jonathan Quick. And as I said on the show last night, certainly as Kings fans, we have witnessed playoff losses on far worse gaffes than what Mike Smith did far later in a game. If I'm not mistaken, I think Jonathan Quick turned the puck over in overtime against the Blues in game 1, I think, of 2013 of the playoffs. And the Kings went on to win that series 4-2. So, as a fan, my instinct is to laugh and point and gloat in your collective misery. But I also know how ultimately meaningless it is. And it's a 7-game series for a reason, as we were saying before you hit the live button.
Yeah, it is. Indeed, it's a 7-game series for a reason. You hope that you don't make. Sometimes, in a close matchup like this, it's not so much about who played better, but who made the fewest mistakes, right? And so like a game like last night, I'm
going to jump in real quick because I was sort of a thought occurred to me today, and I was thinking to myself, there's a difference between beating somebody and winning. And the Kings won the game last night, but I don't think they were ever beating Edmonton.
Yeah, I think that's a safe assessment. I thought, I certainly, I said in my post game that I thought that the Oilers played well enough to win for the most part, but they didn't, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not taking anything away from the LA Kings. I thought the LA Kings played well enough to win and did. So, which makes for a highly entertaining game. Maybe we're not on the right side of it as Oilers fans, but, at the end of the day, if the Oilers come out of this series and every game's been entertaining, you'll talk about that series for a long time. If the Oilers don't come out of this series, then I don't know. We'll talk about other things. It might be it for podcasting. Who knows? I don't know. We're not worried about
therapists in Alberta will be well paid.
We're not worried about Connor McDavid going anywhere, but I'm getting out of the podcast game. Oh man. So no, I don't. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, to your point, Jesse, like 2012 doesn't happen without Jonathan Quick. And no. You guys have the most dominant run in the history of the playoffs, and that doesn't happen without that first round momentum shift and with Jonathan Quick dominated. And what scared me a little bit last night watching live was there was a little bit of that Jonathan Quick there, and that's or we might have said goaltending was thank you, but you knew going in that maybe goaltending was even. We got a couple of older goaltenders. They both can be hot. Smith is hot coming in. And, fair to say, if I was to describe both of those goaltenders, I could do it pretty easily by saying, they're both erratic. They're both big. They're both athletic. They're both battlers. They're both prone to giving up the puck. They're both prone to these mistakes and mental gaffes. But when they are on, they are red, white hot. So, I would have said it was even going in, but here we are. And I think all of a sudden now the Kings have the goaltending advantage just because of how important that position is and what they did last night. You said something that I really like there, that they play for a goalie versus with a goalie. Look at what happens when the E-Bugs play. David Ayres doesn't see the shots he sees in these guys this year without the team just absolutely banding together to make sure that you're playing for that goalie. So I thought that was really, really well said. And to your point in the Oilers dressing room, I really do think we are playing for those goalies. I think Smitty's had a rough year and the guys know it. Smitty can be abrasive, but I think he's looked up to. I think he's a leader. I think he's one of the most outspoken people in that dressing room. So I think when it comes to having quiet leaders like Leon and Connor, a voice like that is important. And so I think his importance has been shown. And Mikko Koskinen, if you had a Mr. Congeniality contest within the dressing room, Mikko might be the winner. Zach Hyman, children book writer aside, that's really, I think they do want to play for those goalies. The media and the rest of the NHL might not think that they have very good goaltending, but I really do believe the guys when they say it, that they think they have good enough goaltending. So it's just going to see. I think it'll be a long series, and that's why we play 7. So yeah, it'd be interesting.
Well, that's good points. I want to maybe switch where we're going a little bit, because this is something that as Oilers fans we saw. I think Jesse, obviously you would have seen it too, but right off the hop, the Kings seem to just come out flying. Right within 30 seconds, they've got a high danger chance. What do you think that is? Is that experience versus youth? I mean, obviously there's a lot of youth on the Kings team, but what do you attribute that to? Is it playing on the road? I mean, they just didn't seem to have the nervous qualities that the Oilers had in the first, I'd say, 15 minutes of the game. I'm going down this route, and thank you, Patrick, is on YouTube. He said I'd argue the Oilers didn't start well enough to win Game 1, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, we talk about Mike Smith, letting in that fourth goal, and that's kind of a fear thing for us in Edmonton land, right? Is that Fear could let in 8, but he wouldn't let in the 9th if that meant the game, right? And that's not always necessarily what you want. I mean, if let's maybe turn the pages a little bit here and say, if the Oilers came out flying and didn't let in 2 early, which I think those first 2 arguably could be, it could be said those are team goals against rather than Mike Smith goals against. Maybe it's a different outcome altogether. But why do you think the LA was able to come out with sort of the?
Can I give you a quick answer and cut off Jesse before he starts? Because I think I honestly feel like there's a poetic justice to hockey. There's like this underlying karma, or the hockey gods or what have you. As Oilers fans, Michael, we see this all the time. Every time Dylan Cousins or whoever is back in, Noah Gregor is back in town in Edmonton, they score 2 on us. And what happened last night was, Trevor grew up a Kings fan. He walks in, gets an opportunity with Danault on the top line this year, has a career year, and who wouldn't score the first goal for LA? Jesse, I don't know. What do you think?
Man, I'm trying to decide how much warning I should give you for the lunacy I'm about to.
Go for it.
I am a secretly, well, I suppose not that secretly, sentimental person who appreciates narratives, whether they're true or not. And I wish I had a better word for it than this, but I believe that this Kings team runs on intangibles, essentially. And you can call them whatever you want: grit, hustle, teamwork, all, tenacity. We've been using them all season long here in LA. And whether it's Blake Lizotte, Alex Iafallo, Trevor Moore, Phil Danault, Sean Dursey, I'm sure there's others, Victor Arvidsson, who wasn't in the lineup last night. Any of those players that I just listed, at one point or another in the season, Todd McClellan or Trent Yanni or Rob Blake or somebody from the front office or some of the players have talked about those players and said that they are the kind of players that will drag you into a play, whether it's Alex Iafallo carrying the puck an extra foot over the blue line and dumping it for a change rather than, holding on to it for too long. If it's, more Danault and Arvidsson chasing down a loose puck in an offensive zone rather than backing off and going for a change, whether it's Alex Iafallo getting a stick on a puck to create a turnover that then forces his 2 line mates to continue the forecheck rather than backing off. There's a fan out here who participates in the fan message boards, who always uses the phrase, and it's one of my favorite phrases. I'm jealous of him for having coined it, but he always talks about whether a player takes an optimistic or a pessimistic position on the ice. And, he says, like, you can learn so much about how a shift is going to go based on how a player is behaving towards the puck. And so, for example, you've got the nice line, Deneau, Arvidsson, and Moore, and they have a very optimistic position when it comes to the forecheck. They are not backing off. They are not playing as if they assume that the puck is going to come back at them through the neutral zone into their defending zone. They are chasing it down. They're getting their sticks active. They're creating the turnovers. And that sort of thing was not present for a number of years here in LA. We watched this team go from contender to, bubble team to, oh my God, we're drafting second overall. What just happened in a very short period of time? And one of the symptoms of that was they wouldn't start the game till 15 minutes were gone off the clock, sometimes more. They would get outplayed in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes sometimes. And I don't know why. I don't know how that kind of thing permeates a locker room. I don't know how that kind of thing takes over a team, but it does. And a really simple response that I maybe would have given before this 3-year span, I would have said, well, that's coaching, right? That's a clear sign of coaching.
We had McClellan. We said the same thing.
Yeah, and so have we. And when Todd McClellan took over 3 years ago, that was still a thing that happened. And it was still a thing that happened last year. And it was still a thing that happened occasionally at the start of this year.
Same
and so I don't know if it is as simple as blaming it on coaching. I don't know if it's as simple as blaming it on anything. I think that one of the things I've learned as a result of working for the team, rather than just screaming at it from my living room, is that these things are like cruise ships. It takes a long time to change direction. It takes a long time to turn around. It's a morbid analogy, but I've always heard that if somebody goes overboard on a cruise, they're cooked, because by the time the ship notices they're gone and turns around to go back and get them, it's just taken too long. And when I was taking sailing lessons in Ottawa, as a kid, they always used to say, don't make quick adjustments, because if you're making, it takes time for the adjustment you make to take effect. Yeah. And if you're reacting too quickly to what's happening, you're going to be overreacting. And so I don't even remember the question. The question was, why did the Kings start out hot and the Oilers didn't? that is the culture that Todd McClellan has slowly installed in this team. And after 3 years and some personnel changes, we are finally seeing it, that, like I said, this team runs on friggin' intangibles. It always sounds ridiculous to me to say, like, we do a King of the Week where we name who the best player of the week was. And I always want to say, like, the King of the Week is heart and teamwork and friendship and, camaraderie. But like, it is. I mean, that's how this team is getting things done. It's crazy.
So, I would say there wasn't as much lunacy there as I was hoping for.
I feel like Jesse's my LA Kings spirit animal. That was about as logical. And
I mean, that's good. And hey, look at it this way.
Relatable.
You were going somewhere, Dash, that I thought, well, at least I thought you were going to go down that path. And I don't think it's true with the Oilers anymore. We used to expect the Oilers to get scored on first. But
I
it
was
hasn't
going down that path,
but it has
to take you down that it took us McClellan, Tippett, and now McClellan's protege for us to get to the same place that Jesse's describing from McClellan, right? So, like, there's so many variables, there's so many catalysts in Jesse's sailboat, that who knows what's making that adjustment all the time, right? And like, I would
not put that down to the game last night, though. Right, like, this was not a typical sort of Oilers start. To me, it was a lot of nerves. I mean, I think playing at home, there's a lot of young players on both teams that are being asked to do a lot more than they normally would, right? Especially given that Doughty's out. I mean, you've got certainly a younger defense for that reason than you normally would.
8 guys made their playoff debut for LA.
Yeah, and so in Edmonton, I mean, you got a guy like McLeod, who he played 12 minutes last night, right? Which is pretty good for a guy that's seeing his first ever playoffs, right? And actually, I thought, and I don't know how well you've followed the Oilers this year, but I thought McLeod came into this game and played like a playoff vet for a guy that has never been in the NHL playoffs before. He did exceptional. Still, I even though you might be told otherwise, I think that first 30 seconds is what cost Puljujarvi game time for the rest of the game. If you watch and the Oilers come out and Puljujarvi's chasing the puck all over the ice, and then all of a sudden he's going east to west, chasing the puck down on the other side, and LA's got this chance to open up the game 1-0 within 30 seconds, and Puljujarvi doesn't see another shift until 9 minutes into the game. So he goes from first line to playing a lot of bench time and finishes with 7 minutes and 50 seconds, which, if I'm looking down the LA Kings ice chart, means there's only 3 players that finished with less than him: Kaliev, Byfield, and Lemieux. Lemieux, by the way, plays 2 minutes and 58 seconds and scores a goal. Go figure. Which, I'm with you, Jesse. I don't know how that went in.
And a counter-punch goal, which the Kings have done all year.
Yeah.
Who
I went back
responds
and
better
I've watched
than
the
Kings?
replay. I've watched the replay of that goal a bunch of times. I'm still not quite sure how it went in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take it, but I just don't know.
Hey, let me ask you. I mean, Lemieux plays 2 minutes and 58 seconds. He's obviously a controversial player, just like his papa. What's your thoughts on him? I mean, is he going to be? We'd hoped for Cassian to come out and bang some bodies around like he did in 2017. I thought he did a lot of that, but he wasn't the difference maker last night that he was the last time we had success in the playoffs. Is Lemieux that guy? Like, what is he to this team? I mean, 2 minutes and 58 seconds, that's just long enough to get out there and score a goal and then go back and sit down.
Yeah. When the Kings acquired Brandon Lemieux, we spoke to a journalist from New York whose name I am not remembering. And she covered the Rangers, and she was very, very complimentary to Brandon Lemieux. And I didn't get it at the time. I didn't have a strong opinion about him one way or the other. I knew that he played for the Rangers. I knew that his dad was Claude Lemieux. I knew that he had a reputation on and off the ice, and that was about it. And I thought, well, I can't remember if we were a last place team or a very close to last place team, but I thought, all right, well, it's another body. It's another option. And, he's tough, and we don't have any tough guys. So, all right, I guess. This season, getting a chance to talk to him now face to face, which we weren't able to do last year, getting a chance to hear him talk about the role that he's played on the team, getting a chance to hear his teammates talk about him, I get why that journalist was so positive about him. He is shockingly self-aware and articulate and well-spoken and thoughtful and a friggin' joy to talk to. And Jonathan Quick doesn't talk to us very much. And Jonathan Quick very clearly does not like talking to us. He was asked in a preview of the series, what kind of competitor is Mike Smith? He said, what do you mean? The follow-up question was, describe Mike Smith's game. And Jonathan Quick said, he's a goalie. He stops the puck. He stops him a lot. and he plays some. And then he got up and left. So Jonathan Quick does not like to talk to the media. When Brandon Lemieux received his suspension earlier this year, we were gathered in the locker room that we used to talk to the team after practice. And the PR staff came down and said, you're getting one player who will come and talk to you about Brandon Lemieux. He's going to make a statement, and then that's it. We're done. And we were led to believe that a number of players were all vying to be the player to come speak to us. The player that came and spoke to us was Jonathan Quick. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, all that needs to be said about Brandon Lemieux is that when there was an opportunity for the team to make a comment on who he was, what kind of teammate he was, it was Jonathan Quick who volunteered to do the thing that he seemingly hates to do the most, which is come and talk to us for a few minutes.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's awesome, actually.
And was very, very clear about what kind of teammate they all feel that Brandon Lemieux is. And we've heard from a number of different players over the course of the year. This is one of Jim Fox's favorite things about Brandon Lemieux. We have heard from players that Brandon Lemieux has pulled them aside and said, if you get in trouble and I'm on the ice, get out of there. Don't worry about it. That's not your job. I will come and take care of it. And Jim Fox talked about Marty McSorley and how Marty McSorley had those same conversations with him when they were playing together for the Kings. And he talked about what it meant as a player, as a teammate, to have somebody on your team come and tell you, not in the moment, come and bail you out, not afterwards say, oh, I got whatever, but in advance say, if this ever happens, I have your back. I am watching out for you. And so Brandon Lemieux is not the biggest guy. He's not the toughest guy, but he absolutely brings an element to this team. I just said, that whole thing about this team running on intangibles. I don't think I mentioned his name in that list of players I threw out there. I should have. Shame on me, because Blake Lizotte and Brandon Lemieux on that fourth line together for 60% of the season. There was a time where the number one line in LA, as far as time on ice together, was Lemieux, Lizotte, and Kaliev. Those three guys played more minutes together. I think because of injury and COVID, maybe, and suspensions, maybe that is no longer the case. But for a good long portion of the season, those three guys were the line that had played the most minutes together. And Brandon Lemieux and Blake Lizotte, man, it's that intangibles, that forecheck, that hustle,
the truculence.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. And I this season I have wound up really enjoying a lot of players that I never thought I would, and Brandon Lemieux is absolutely one.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, I don't know if Dash is surprised, but I'm definitely surprised by that answer. But pleasantly surprised. It's always good to hear something from inside a team and maybe how they look at a player, and certainly wasn't the story we got, outside of LA.
Yeah, we're limited to what we hear, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's good.
I want to double down on it now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because right after the suspension, there were the comments about, nobody likes him and his teammates don't like him and blah, blah, blah. The team absolutely contests that claim.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I don't know if they're lying. I don't think they are. I don't know why they would, but like everybody we've spoken to on this Kings team has used language that I can't repeat to express how untrue those comments were. And I get it. When you get bit, you're going to say wild stuff, but everything we've been told suggests that it is simply not true, that he is a very popular player within the locker room.
Oh, right on. Well, that's good to hear, I guess. And we'll see. I mean, if he plays a big part in the series, maybe it won't be good to hear. I don't. Well,
if anything, a guy like that lets you play a few inches taller, right? And exactly to your point, Jesse, if you know that guy is going to be in there before you can say giddy up, then right, like we had that in George Larocque for a decade too, where we knew he'd be right there. So, I think when Evander Kane became an Oiler, Connor McDavid started playing another inch or two taller. He had some confidence too, because he knows that he can muck it up a little bit. So I think those are very true words.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, obviously he was used sparingly in the game, but he still made his spot on the score sheet. And and what come playoff time, right? Those are the kind of guys that do make a difference quite often, right? In some way, shape, or form. It'd be interesting to see where that.
His dad. We were talking about. I've been talking about this all week. Lemieux's dad was, in my mind, the quintessential player who showed up in the postseason.
Yeah, 100%.
It's one of the first names you list.
Yeah.
Clutch.
Yeah, and I mean everybody hated him.
Yes,
and for that reason, right? And I've said on this show, numerous times, the more I hate a player, the more I'd love to see him on my team. And Claude Lemieux was definitely in that category of guys that I absolutely hated. But if I'd seen him in an Oilers uniform, I would have defended him to the death. I get that, and I'm not surprised by that. I guess I am surprised, to hear a different story other than the one. And you talk about narratives, a narrative that was told outside of LA when the suspension hit, and maybe it was a couple guys with a beef. Who knows, right? I mean, you only get what people want to put out there on the news, and so that's kind of interesting. All right, let's. We got about 10 minutes left. We'll start running it down. When you got into this series, I mean, obviously as a guy that's working for the organization, that's a fan and has been you've been following LA for quite some time. Like, what were you feeling prior to the series start? Was this something where you were kind of in the back of your head thinking, we're looking at 6 games and then the golf course, and then of course Brown comes out and says I'm retiring when this is done. Is any of that like factor in? Did your gut tell you maybe these guys can pull it out? Like what were your thoughts going in?
Wow. Well, you asked 2 questions there.
There's lots.
You brought up the Dustin Brown
there.
thing.
Yeah.
I'll just focus on expectations for the series first.
Yeah.
This is a conversation that's been going on around the team in the media side all year long, which is you could tell me any outcome and I would believe you. You could tell me Oilers in 4, Oilers in 5, Oilers in 6, Oilers in 7, Kings in 7, Kings in 6, Kings in 5, Kings in 4. And I would believe you because I don't know what's going on this season. I don't know if it was the COVID shortened season. I don't know if I have some unpopular theories about the draft. But it seems to me that the league right now is split between the really, really good and the really, really bad. And there's a very small handful of teams that exist in the middle. And I think that the Kings and the Oilers at the moment are in that middle area. I think the Oilers shouldn't be because of the talent on the forward lines. And so going into the series, I didn't know. I didn't think the Kings were going to make the playoffs this season. I probably shouldn't admit that too loudly. I thought we would be a contender. I thought we would, be in the mix. And I think that maybe if other teams' seasons had gone a little bit better, maybe it would have been a lot harder to make the playoffs. But,
no tears shed on that one, by the way. No tears.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I've got my theories about why everybody's thrilled that they missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been getting very mad at all the people I hear talking about it, saying it's jealousy. It's not jealousy. I didn't hate the Penguins, the Blackhawks, the Red Wings, the Avalanche. Like I didn't hate any of the successful dynasties. It's not jealousy. That's not how that works. Anyway, so going into this series, it's all house money at some level. I want them to win. I'm rooting for them to win. It would make my personal and professional lives more enjoyable. But I have been talking to a number of people, most of them my age or roughly my age. And I think
early 20s. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. 22. I think the Dustin Brown thing has added another layer of perspective that helped it. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just talking for myself. I don't know. But for me, anyway, that day and that press conference and getting to hear his wife and his kids and all the old players and current players who have played with him talk about what he's meant to this organization, it makes it really, really hard not to be grateful for what we have experienced as Kings fans. And in that mood and tone of gratefulness, it's really hard to then be like, well, you better win you bums. Like, thanks for the cup twice. Thanks for being one of the greatest players we've ever watched in a Kings jersey. Thanks for the incredible memories and, allowing us to say we're Kings fans without hanging our heads in shame, the way Oilers fans of the current generation must. Thanks for all that. But if you lose, you're the worst. So I don't know. I just think it takes a lot of sting off of that. And it's a different experience of watching a playoff game. Having said that, I was screaming at the refs like a lunatic last night, as if everything I just said wasn't true. So, man.
That's a point that I wanted to talk about. I think we got enough time because here's the way I thought actually, and I agree with you. There were a couple of calls during the game that I thought were a little iffy. But having said that,
that's a very polite way of saying it.
Yeah,
both ways, both ways though.
But that's the thing.
Questionable.
The thing that I see is this is for as many as they do call, there's a whole bunch that they don't call, and I do the same thing. I'll go back and I'll watch a game and I'll have complained about the refs and that shouldn't have been a trip, and then there's about 2 or 3 that the Oilers got away with that probably should have been an actual trip. And that's how I felt the game went last night. I didn't think that and obviously the Kings still won. I didn't think, and I had expected that they would have some more to do with the outcome of the game because Kazari was reffing. And I don't know how much you know about Kazari and the Oilers, but the Oilers' record with Kazari wearing the stripes is not good, and that's whether you believe in conspiracy or not, it stems from a time where Connor McDavid basically chirped him,
showed him up,
yeah, and said check this one upstairs after he scored on the shootout because the first time he scored they didn't count it. And ever since that time, I think, the Oilers have had, a significantly lopsided disadvantage in those games when Kazari on both the penalty sheet and the score sheet. So when I saw that he was reffing the game, I didn't have much hope that I'd leave the game thinking the officials didn't affect the outcome. But yeah, I get where you're coming from. There were the two penalties that were called. I thought were against Draisaitl, and then the one against McDavid. I thought in most games, not penalty, even not playoff games, they probably wouldn't and shouldn't be called. But there were a couple that I thought they missed. So to me, it kind of evened itself out.
When both teams are complaining about the referees at the end of the game, and I was in the building, and there was plenty of ref you suck chants going.
I definitely heard those coming.
The refs have probably done their job, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, by NHL standards, Dash, they probably
all things relative. Yes, of course. Thank you.
I mean, I know McClellan was not happy last night a couple times. So there's that. Now, here's the other thing I want to ask before we finish, because that was one of them. I wanted to get your take on it. I always find it a little bit amusing that if you ask whatever fans, they're always complaining about the officials. Both sides, doesn't matter which game it is. What's the feeling like in LA? I mean, they're in Edmonton. One of the radio stations had a little fun calling random LA numbers and asking about the game.
Oh no!
And I mean, obviously, people, LA is a big city, a lot's going on, and so I think it's fun to poke fun, but the reality is there's so much going on in LA that hockey. I mean, you could probably do that on if there's a Clippers game or a Lakers game going or something, and you'd probably still find there's a lot of people who are doing something else, or they'd rather be out surfing or something. Who knows? But like, what's the general consensus in LA? Is there some excitement about playoffs, or is this a city that is still a California city and nobody's going to get too excited until later rounds?
You have managed to save the question that is most likely to get me in trouble until the very last question.
All right.
try and say this as delicately as I can. LA is a small market town when it comes to hockey.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the Dodgers and the Lakers, we are a huge market town.
Yeah.
There are not nearly as many Kings fans as there are Dodgers fans or Lakers fans. We get very, very little coverage in the local media. In fact, I am employed by the team primarily because I'm just that good at my job. But the path that led me to this job would not exist in a different market. If I lived in Montreal or Edmonton or Calgary or Vancouver or New York or Boston or Minnesota, which is not a city, it would have been very, very difficult for a season ticket holder to start an independent commentary on the team and wind up employed by the team.
Yeah.
Having said that, there are those Kings fans that do exist are ridiculously passionate, ridiculously well-informed. I don't always agree with the opinions they form after they've gotten their information, but they have the information. I think, well, I don't like talking for every fan base, but I think the general tone that I have seen, whether it's on social media or the message boards or the practice rink or at crypto.com this season, the general tone I see is optimism and excitement because we have been promised a rebuild and a return to competitiveness, and it's finally here. And the fact that, like I said at the top, the fact that the Kings won that game following the script that you would expect, you know, Connor got his, Draisaitl got his, special teams did what special teams will do, and the Kings still came away with a win and a 1-0 lead on the road to open the series. I think Kings fans are excited and happy and also very, very nervous for the rest of the series. I don't want to suggest that we're confident by any stretch of the imagination, and really, really can't wait for Friday night to get back in crypto.com arena.
Yeah, that'd be fun for you, no doubt. I'm going to let Dash, I'll let you say something about the atmosphere around the game yesterday, just, you know, for Jesse to get some comparables. I think you would have seen it on some TV, but Dash, you were at the game last night. Give us an idea of what that was like, and then Jesse, we'll get back to you for the last word of the night.
Yeah, it was, I mean, you know, the energy was, if you want me to really be honest, like I had my wife pull over on the way to the arena because I thought I was going to throw up. Like I had butterflies like I was 18 years old and on my way to junior tryouts. I think I shared that same energy with a lot of the fans, right? I mean, you know, we've all been through this pandemic. We all wanted to be there. We all wanted the playoffs. And, you know, when Trevor Moore scores that goal and it sucks the energy right out of the building, right? And that's exactly what the Kings needed. And, you know, they've walked in as the road team and already put their win on. It's your goal to split, and you've checked that box, right? So I think the pressure's off the Kings for tomorrow, and whether that energy in the building, yeah, I mean, I think the Oilers were overwhelmed by it, to be honest. I think that first period was kind of like a whoa. And I would say that Kaliev and Byfield might have kind of also been similarly overwhelmed for the first part of that, just kind of taking it all in. So, yeah, I'm also excited for the game. I think keys for LA will to be consistently aggressive, but stay out of the penalty box. And, you know, the Oilers need to figure out how to control your guys' forecheck that they couldn't, right? We're supposed to have Mike Smith in net because he can handle the puck and take pressure off the D. But I was in the King shoot twice end and 11 rows up from Mike Smith's right shoulder. And all I saw all night was the Kings pressure. Their cycle was relentless. And, you know, we're supposed to have this experienced D with Duncan Keith and Darnell Nurse, and we have this goaltender that can handle the puck. But all three goals were caused by turnovers and cough ups by our team. So we need to get that turned around and figured out. And I think over 7 games, if we can play better 5-on-5 and we can cut those mistakes back, we'll still be okay.
Yeah, good points. Good points. All right. Well, we're at that time of the night. And Jesse, I'd say since I started this last word bit, I haven't had anybody from a opposing team's podcast or other than that, outside of Oilers fans or Oilers media on to get the last word. So you're the first one. Don't abuse it. or abuse it all you want. I'm putting myself on.
Well, can I give you an either or option for what my last word will be about?
No. You know what? You go ahead and you do it, and we'll go from there. I'll ask you to stay on for a minute while the outro goes after you say goodbye. But you know the deal. I want to thank you. I do want to thank you for being here, and
Me
for
too.
those that want to follow Jesse on Twitter, and he's a good follow. You can follow him at Kingsmen Podcast. And believe it or not, for a guy that podcasts about a team, it's actually a pretty rational listen. It's not as homerism as you'd expect. Not like my
Yeah, nowhere near as much of Homer as we are.
nowhere near as bad as we are here. So no, it was great, and it was a pleasure having you on. Thanks for being a good sport and being here tonight. Really appreciate it. And now, last word is all up to you. I'm on mute.
Thanks, Jesse.
So the last word for those who do follow me on Twitter will be a familiar one, and that is that I don't like the NHL entry draft, and I think it's time we got rid of it. I constantly have this fight. I've been having it for many years now. And the number one response I always get is, well, if you get rid of the draft, how will you disperse the talent? To which I say, unrestricted free agency for 18-year-olds, just like any other industry. And then everybody always says, well, you can't do that because all the good players will go to a few teams and those few teams will be good. And I can see you nodding, Dash. And to that, I would simply ask you to look at the Eastern Conference. Because if the draft exists to promote parity and to save us from a league where the good teams are good and the bad teams are bad, I think I was listening to Merrick and Friedman recently, and they said something like 13 of the 16 teams in the playoffs have made the playoffs for the last 6 years in a row. And, the other 3 have made it for 2 or 3 years in a row. And if this is what the draft is protecting, no, thank you. I don't think that's a good enough justification to stop 18-year-olds from being trapped, in my mind, in franchises that don't have any idea what they're doing. I get angry at franchises that are able to draft world-class talents and then, in my mind, waste the first half of their career, not quite sure how to get them into the playoffs and then trading them to the desert in some cases. Making the playoffs and then flaming out in the first round frequently. Or I was very mad at Calgary for a few years because they refused to let go of the good players they had and they wouldn't just get off the pot, as it were. But that's not about the draft. Anyway, I think the draft is unfair to the kids that are coming in. And I don't think it does anywhere near what it's meant to do. And I think that the league would sort itself out if we got rid of it. Players would still find their way onto different teams. If Connor McDavid wound up in New York, well, then, Shane Wright isn't going to New York, is he? Because Connor McDavid's already there taking up all the minutes, all the money, and all the spotlight. Shane Wright will play somewhere else and let the teams actually have to be good to compete for talent rather than what we have now, which is a system that rewards teams for being bad and giving them the talent. So I don't like the NHL entry draft. It's time to get rid of it. And cranberry sauce on a pizza instead of tomato sauce is delicious. Good night.
Oilers Live.